Good evening. I am the WFSE Pirate, and I would first off like to welcome back students to Edinburgh for yet another semester. I too am returning to WFSE for a few more months. Last semester, you may remember my premiere of Controversy. As I was given such great reviews, I've decided that the show will continue. Let me remind you how the show will work. I will take a half an hour every Monday at 7 p.m. to discuss controversial topics, generally from within the past week. The topics may be broad and could include anything from politics to sports. I have done my research. I know my facts. Some things I say will be controversial to you. Please keep an open mind. The show will end at 7:30, at which point the phone line will be open for 1/2 hour until 8 p.m. This is for you to call in and tell me either why you agree or disagree. Controversy begins right now. As an American culture, we are outraged and infuriated by the mass murders we have seen in our nation, and none are more empathetic than I. So I would first off like to say that my thoughts and prayers go out to anyone who has been affected by any such tragedy. However, we are still in the wake of Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings. While our emotions may be a little less biting, none of us, least of all politicians, have forgotten about the issues that this horrific tragedy has brought forth. Gun control. On January 16th, President Obama put Republicans up in arms, releasing 23 executive actions that he plans to take in order to address gun violence. Part of the reason so many Republicans were upset about these actions is simply because they do not trust our president. However, the majority of people who were upset with these actions most likely did not read the 23 executive actions. Let me read a few of them for you. Direct the Attorney General to review categories of individuals prohibited from having a gun to make sure dangerous people are not slipping through the cracks. Launch a national safe and responsible gun ownership campaign. At this point, we don't know exactly what this entails. However, I would bet that most citizens would have no problem with a responsible gun owner campaign. Release a Department of Justice report analyzing information on lost and stolen guns and make it widely available to law enforcement. I find it difficult to find anything wrong with these executive actions. There are, however, a few I would like to discuss. Executive Action 14 reads, issue a presidential memorandum directing the Centers for Disease Control to research the cause and prevention of gun violence. I'm not opposed to research at all. In fact, I love it. I do, however, have two problems with this research. First is simply that the research will be strictly observational. They cannot run experiments with patients and see if their patients are committing murder. When it comes to observational experiments, we cannot truly tell if there is an exact cause. My other problem is that the CDC is run by the government. Those in charge of the government definitely have a political agenda. This would then give the possibility that the results could be interpreted in a way that fits a certain political agenda. For those two reasons, I think Executive Action 14 may be a backdoor for politicians to sneak their political agenda through the cracks. Moving along to another executive action that causes a little bit of concern. Executive Action 23 reads, a national dialogue led by Secretary Sebelius and Duncan on mental health. Currently, as it stands now, those with a history of mental health issues are not allowed to own a gun. But my question is, where do we draw the line? One major reason for putting in this mental health law for gun ownership was for those who were diagnosed with diseases such as schizophrenia. What many people don't realize is how few people actually have these types of diseases. Of all Americans with mental health issues, less than 2% are diagnosed with schizophrenia. So this brings me back to my original question. Where do we draw the line? We live in a country where 20% or 1 in 5 people can be diagnosed with a quote-unquote mental health disorder. While that number may seem startlingly high, you have to understand that diseases such as anorexia nervosa and bulimia are considered to be mental health disorders. This should bring some serious concern to many of us because it is entirely legitimate to say that at any point, one of us could be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. And even if that disorder is something like anorexia, it is not out of the question to think that it could imply beyond a reasonable doubt that we should not be in possession of a firearm. Listen, I'm not anywhere close to being finished in this discussion on firearms. Keep it locked on 88.9. It's about to get a little bit more heated when we return. Welcome back into WFSC 88.9 Fighting Scots Radio. You're live with the WFSC Pirate. We're still talking gun control. A reminder that our phone lines will open up at 7:30. Now, despite the fact that President Obama has not put legislation into place that would in any way take away guns, that does not mean that any such plans are not in the works. A bill has been proposed in Massachusetts that is the beginning step toward gun confiscation. The bill is blatantly obvious with government's attempts to take away our guns. This bill would require all firearms categorized as assault weapons to be stored, not in your home or anywhere in your person, but instead only at government-approved storage depots. I'm gonna let that sink in. I'm gonna say it one more time. You can only store your assault weapons, according to this bill in Massachusetts, proposed bill. You can only store your gun at government-approved storage depots. Yes, you heard me correctly. Your own gun cannot be in your possession, but instead it would be in the possession of the same people who just months ago gave fully automatic weapons to Mexican drug cartels. Now, over the past few weeks, I've been talking with a number of college students and asking them what they know about Fast and Furious, the operation that, quote-unquote, accidentally lost fully automatic assault rifles to Mexican drug cartels. The response I got nearly all the time went something like this: I've never heard of it. This is disgusting. People, educate yourselves. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about Fast and Furious right now, but I will go back to the point I was earlier making. That is that your semi-automatic, quote-unquote, assault rifle, according to this Massachusetts bill, will not be allowed to be in your possession, despite the fact that our government has given fully automatic assault rifles, and yes, in this case, I will indeed say assault rifles here, because they are fully automatic. You can kill many people with one simple pull of the trigger. So despite the fact that we've given these fully automatic assault rifles to drug cartels, our government thinks it's wise to rid U.S. citizens of semi-automatic weapons. The bill does say more about other measures it would take, like an increase in price for ammunition, but I, for the moment, would like to continue talking about this assault weapon storage. If you're 18 years old and have a clean background, for the time being at least, you can purchase an assault rifle. Why? Because assault rifles are not easy to conceal. We don't see people walking down the street carrying an assault rifle. If we did, most likely the police would no doubt be all over them. So this question asks, what are assault rifles for? Well, contrary to popular belief, assault rifles are not, hear me, they are not used to shoot up schools like Sandy Hook. Despite the fact that media coverage was blaming the heinous crime on assault-style rifle, the details of this horrible shooting were released on January 18th, showing that no assault rifle was used. In fact, it was 4 handguns. So, what are these assault-style weapons for? Well, it's simple. Really? They're used for you to protect yourself, your property, and your family from violent assailants. However, if your assault rifle is locked up at a government facility, then what becomes the purpose of owning it? Honestly, it seems at that point, the only purpose would indeed be violence. Or if, God forbid, martial law breaks out, we may need them, but then we'd have to operate under the assumption that the government would give us our assault weapons if indeed martial law were implemented. But wait, there's more. California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein has released a list of 120 guns which she characterizes as quote-unquote assault rifles that she would want completely banned. However, this may only be the beginning. Maybe at first these 120 guns become classified as assault rifles and are required to be locked up at a government facility. But how about 5, 10 years down the road? Who's to say that our government won't classify 9mm handguns as assault weapons? After all, you can assault someone with it. We don't know what our government's plan is, but I can tell you this. The future looks threatening. Understand me. No politician would announce that government is going to collect all guns. That's not what's going to happen. Despite how many people feel, politicians are smart and can be very manipulative. They understand that in order to collect guns, they must start off small. They must win over popular opinion and do so when emotions are running high. And right now, in the wake of Sandy Hook, emotions are running super high. But they're not about to just go out and announce, hey, guess what, everybody? Guns are dangerous, and we're going to take all your guns, so you should bring them all up. No, they're doing exactly what they have to do. They're starting out small, and they do it under the guise of, oh, well, it's for the protection of all the children. Yet, you know who else came out and said it's for the protection of children? I'll tell you who. Hitler. Okay? He was a very, very evil man. And our government, in some ways, I'm not in any way comparing anybody in our government to Hitler, but some of the tactics that they're using in order to collect our guns are similar to the tactics used by Hitler, and that scares me because I don't want to see our country go down any similar type of path that the mid-40s, mid-30s regime in Germany did. That's not going to be good for anybody in our country. So I beg of you, do not let your emotions run out of control. Stand up for our Constitution and the Second Amendment. Like I said, your guns will not be taken away overnight. It will be a slow gathering with public opinion siding with our government. Listen, stay right here on 88.9 FM. I'm still talking gun control when we return. Gun control. Welcome back on Fighting Scots Radio. Once again, I am the WFSC Pirate. It's time for my last segment talking about gun control of the day, and I'm talking about why guns cannot be taken away. A task force has been launched by the White House with Vice President Joe Biden as the leader. President Obama said some things he would like to address with this task force is the role of violence in entertainment and measures to improve mental health care. Addressing a role of violence in the media is absolutely something that needs to be given some attention, as there is significant research showing a relationship between violent programming and violent acts. I do, however, as I mentioned before, I have a problem with the measures to improve mental health care. Now, do not hear me wrong. I am not saying we should stop trying to improve a person's mental health. My problem comes with defining mental health. First off, what types of mental health can we conclude as being threatening enough that a person has their Second Amendment right stripped away from them? I'm still waiting for an answer for this. This is a question that no one seems to be able to directly identify certain mental health issues that constitute that your Constitution rights should be taken away. My second and larger problem is simply, what will be the steps government takes in order to improve mental health care? Here's why I find this to be a problem. Drugs for depression such as Zoloft, Valium, and many other antidepressants have a direct correlation with many violent acts. Mass murders, going all the way back to when they first became prescription drugs back in the 1950s. Now, one of our first major mass killings in the U.S. occurred in 1966. And since that time, antidepressants have become more and more prevalent in our society, and so have mass murders. Now, I am not saying that these antidepressants are the cause of mass murders. After all, it's a correlational study, and like I said earlier, it may or may not be the cause. However, I do think that the evidence is there. Before the 60s, people had plenty of access to gun. People hated other people. But before the 60s, we didn't hear of mass shootings. It seems illogical to think that mass shootings and antidepressants have no correlation. Think about the facts. Not only does the time period make sense, but what does the label on antidepressants say? It says, may cause suicidal thoughts. Well, I wonder if it could cause suicidal thoughts. Who's to say these drugs cannot also cause homicidal thoughts? Now, having said all of that, I will agree that steps do need to be taken in order to combat gun violence, because indeed, it is not acceptable. However, we cannot get ahead of ourselves. We cannot just allow guns to be banned and say that murders happen because of guns. That would be like me blaming a misspelled word on my pencil. It just doesn't make sense. Murders happen because people want to kill other people. I misspell a word, not because my pencil spells it wrong, but because I don't know how to spell it in my head. What needs to be done is a full, exhaustive investigation into the cause of gun violence. Is it because of violence in the media, like the president has proposed? Yeah, probably. That probably has something to do with it. Is it because of certain prescription drugs? Maybe. I don't know. But what I will say is that this research needs to be done by a group who is 100% independent from the government. Because if one thing is clear, it is that we do not have a gun problem. We have a problem, we have a people problem, and taking guns away in any fashion is not the answer. And if you don't believe me, believe this. The city of Chicago, which arguably has the most strict gun laws in the U.S., also has the highest number of murders in the country. It's like the saying goes, if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. Now, don't get yourselves worked up. Say, oh, I'm just a gun-toting lunatic. Listen, to be completely honest, if there were a way to get rid of all the guns in the entire world, I think that could possibly be an answer. But like I said, there will always be evil people with guns, guns that are not registered, guns that are being sold on the black market. Even if we could get rid of all the guns in America, like I said not too long ago, Mexican drug cartels have fully automatic weapons. Who's to protect me when one of those guys comes charging at me? And living in Pennsylvania, maybe it's not such a big deal, but if you outlaw guns in Texas or Arizona, anybody who has a border with Mexico, they could be put in some serious danger, and that's not something that we should have for our own country. And guns will never be completely gone from this planet. And therefore, you can't get rid of them just because a few crazy people who are taking prescription painkillers or antidepressants decide to go out and commit heinous crimes. What can be done is, like is proposed, have a national gun awareness, run a safety campaign, do types of things to combat gun violence, educate children in schools that if you see a gun, call a police officer or do something. But what we can't have is law-abiding citizens losing their Second Amendment rights because once every few months there's a mass murder. Listen, the phone line's open in just a few minutes. So whether you agree or disagree, give me a call. 814-732-2886. That's 814-732-2886. I'm the WFSC Pirate, and this has been Controversy.